what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story I want to talk about today, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming Arnold Classic Brazil. This is the next show on the pro roster, and we've had a couple names talk about doing it. One of the names that I think not as many people are familiar with is Behrooz Tabani. He's working with Milo Sarshev. He won a show last year and qualified for last year's Mr. Olympia, but he was unable to travel to compete at the Olympia despite being one of the more impressive guys that qualified for that show. And I think he doesn't get enough appreciation for how good he really is. He brings really good conditioning. He's got a really good shape. I would say the one thing that he really needs to bring up more is his lower body, but he really does have a world-class upper body. Great aesthetics, great V-taper, great midsection, really. He's got great abs. And in these recent updates, he's looking razor sharp. He looks really, really good. And as far as guys that have committed to doing this show, really the two frontrunners that I've heard of are Sergio Oliva Jr. and Behrooz Tabani. So I think even though he's not as big of a name, he's going to be a guy that can really make a statement at this show, and I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up winning. Now, Sergio Oliva Jr., on the other hand, we still don't know for sure whether or not he's going to be able to compete there, but he did post an update recently where he did not look downsized. There's been a lot of talk about Sergio Oliva Jr. and some of the updates looking a bit smaller, but in this update, this was posted 16 hours ago, he says just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening, and it's a transformation photo where he was 165 pounds in 2007, beginning his bodybuilding journey to 291 pounds, apparently, this morning. And again, I believe the last show that he did in Legion Sports Festival, which was a couple years ago now, I believe he weighed about 280 at that show. So he's heavier than he was there. So certainly not a small guy. Even if we're saying, you know, he might have looked downsized in some of those updates, on the scale, he's not. And honestly, I think this is the most impressive of all the updates that we've seen from Sergio recently. This most muscular here, he looks really big. His conditioning looks good. He looks grainy throughout his upper body, very vascular, of course. But again, now we're about 10 days out, a little bit under 2 weeks out from that show. We're getting very, very close to the Arnold Classic Brazil, the weekend of the 15th. So we're probably going to be getting an actual competitor list here in the next week or so. We don't have a full confirmed competitor list at all right now. But right now, the two most competitive guys that I know of doing it are Behrooz and Sergio Oliva Jr. So it should be an interesting show if they both show up and are able to compete. Now, Andrew Jacked also confirming recently what his next show will be. Now, he's still several months away. I think it's like 4 months away, the Texas Pro, which will be August 19th, 2023 this year. Coincidentally, this was the same show that was Andrew Jack's first professional win and his first qualification to the Olympia last year. Now, he obviously went on to go ahead and win the Arnold Classic UK, and then he was top 3 at this year's Arnold Classic, but that still was not enough to qualify him for the Olympia yet this year. And I'm going to show you guys the current Olympia qualified competitor list in a few seconds here, so just keep in mind, this year, there are no point standings. So when you see this list, there's going to be no qualified point standings. But yes, Andrew Jack still has to qualify, even though he was top 3 at the Arnold Classic this year. That's not going to do anything for him because there's no points. You have to win a show to get to the Olympia, which I think is the way to do it. And this just goes back to the point that I've been making. I know it's slow right now in bodybuilding. There's not very many shows happening. But once these shows start to kick off towards the end of spring and beginning of summer, you've got a lot of guys, really good bodybuilders, some of the biggest names in the sport, that have not yet qualified for the Olympia, that are going to be competing at some of these smaller shows that you guys might not typically watch. There's going to be some bangers coming up. So if you go over right now and we look at this current qualified competitors list, look how small it is. Brett Wilkin, Hadi Chupin, Derek Lunsford, Nick Walker, Brandon Curry, Big Ramy, and Samson Dowda. Compared to last year's competitor list, at the end of the year we had, 36 qualified competitors. Here you only have 7, almost the entire first quarter into the year. So think about how many names are missing from that list. Rafael Brandau, Sean Clarita, well, he's going back to 212. Nathan Diasha, Charles Griffin, Regan Grimes, James Hollingshead, Patrick Johnson, Michal Krizo, Hunter Labrada, Hassan Mustafa, Andrea Musi, Andrew Jack not on that list, Justin Rodriguez, Mohamed Shaban, Antoine Vaillant, Ian Valliere, Akeem Williams. Top tier guys not yet qualified. And there's only so many shows, and you have to win one to get to the Olympia. So I think these shows coming up are going to be stacked. The New York Pro, the Chicago Pro, the Texas Pro, Tampa Pro, Chicago. These are going to be some entertaining shows. Now, speaking of the Chicago Pro, one guy that we know is doing that show, Blessing Awodibu. I believe Justin Shire is also doing that show, but Blessing has been posting more and more physique updates lately. Obviously, didn't place where he wanted to place at the Olympia. He was, I believe, tied for last. But he's about 15 weeks out right now. The last update that he gave of his weight was over 300 pounds. And he looks big. He looks huge. But again, the thing with Blessing is we know his upper body is massive. It's wide. He's got these crazy wide shoulders, these crazy wide lats, thick, dense back. We know this about Blessing. But I think it's always going to come back to his lower body. We've been saying this even when he won shows. The conversation was after those wins to go on to win some bigger shows. He still needs to bring up his legs. Because no matter how good his conditioning is, and he's had some good condition at some of the shows that he won, there's still going to be that imbalance. So I think as we see these updates and as we see him talk about, I'm a 300-pound guy, etc., I'm seeing that size in the upper body. But I'm still not necessarily seeing it going to the lower body. We're seeing his upper body get bigger, which might not necessarily be good if his lower body isn't growing at the same rate. Because then you're just going to have an even bigger imbalance. If the upper body's growing at this crazy rate, he's 300 plus pounds, hitting a vacuum pose, all this stuff. But we need to see that lower body improve. That's just the main point that I want to hammer home. And hopefully he does that over the next 15 weeks for the Chicago Pro Prep. Now, next up in the news, Michal Krizo did a guest posing this past weekend. I got some extra photos here besides the one that he posted. And we know that Michal Krizo was weighing, quote, well over 300 pounds at this guest posing. Again, another major name here. Michal Krizo not yet qualified for the 2023 Mr. Olympia, but we know he is shooting for qualifying for the 2023 Mr. Olympia. And as I mentioned a couple videos ago, there's a lot of international shows this year. There's a lot of opportunities overseas for him to try to qualify that are closer to him. But look, honestly, I still think even though he placed 12th at the Olympia last year, I think that was a good placing for him. I think he showed he's the real deal. He turned pro very quickly. He won a show very quickly, qualified for the Olympia very quickly. And even though he was outside of the top 10 in his first Olympia, there was like 30 guys in this Olympia. It was one of the toughest Olympia lineups ever, meaning he still beat like 20 guys to earn that 12th place placing. So I think whatever show he does pick to do, he's going to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite to win. And I think this year at the Olympia, if he does qualify, which I think he likely will, I have a feeling he will have made some improvements and he's going to move up from that 12th place placing. Because remember, right after the Olympia, Michal Krizo had told me initially after winning that pro show, he wasn't even planning on continuing to do the Olympia that year. He was going to go back to the drawing board and make some improvements and try to qualify the following year. So his initial plan wasn't to even do the Olympia after qualifying. I think the main plan for 2022 was to turn pro, was to do a pro show, kind of make a statement, and then try to focus on the Olympia the following year. So this run that he makes at the Olympia this year, I think is going to be his actual serious Olympia run. And I think he's going to do some damage. Now, another name that you don't see on that Olympia qualified competitor list is Hunter Labrada. He was previously top 4 at the Olympia in 2021, dropping all the way to 7th place this past year in 2022, looking to make some improvements and still looking to try to qualify for the 2023 Mr. Olympia. Again, back to that point, a lot of really good bodybuilders not even qualified yet for the Olympia. So it's been a while since I posted a full update, but after traveling 20 out of the last 30 days, I'm not mad about how I look. My weight was 283 pounds, fasted this morning. So look, the question is, can Hunter Labrada get himself back into the conversation as being a first call-out guy that can find himself battling for top 3 at the Olympia, or was that a one-time thing? The main issue to me at the Olympia this year was his midsection. So I guess the real question is he going to be able to fix that for next year? I think his conditioning was off as well, but the thing that really my eye kept getting drawn to looking at his Olympia routine and the comparisons was his midsection was way off, his breathing wasn't controlled, and it was really causing his midsection to spill out. And that was the main thing that I noticed, because when he doesn't have that issue, he actually has a pretty aesthetic physique for the amount of size that he carries, But when he does have that issue with the midsection, it really throws off the flow of his physique. And in the updates that we've seen from him so far in the offseason, I haven't really seen much to suggest there's a huge difference with his midsection. I can still see, if you look at his lower abs particularly, there's this protruding area. And that's kind of the same thing that you saw at the Olympia, just to a little bit more degree. And it's kind of the age-old question with bodybuilding and the whole gut thing. Can it be reversed? Really, the only guy that we've seen really make a dramatic transformation with his midsection in recent years was Rolly Winkler. Rolly Winkler did a phenomenal job of, at one point, having a pretty big problem with what we were calling at the time Palumboism. And he completely turned that around in a matter of a couple years to where he was hitting a vacuum pose. And actually, in recent years, we haven't really had to talk about this midsection issue because really, not a lot of people have had it. Even Nick Walker, who has had that issue in the off-season, hasn't really had that issue on stage. So we've been kind of spoiled in this recent era of bodybuilding to not really have anything to complain about in terms of midsections with the champions. Maybe some of the guys that were outside the conversation, but the winners of these major shows recently, they haven't really had any gut issues at all, and they've actually been, pretty aesthetic. But I guess the question falls on you guys. What do you think of Hunter Labrada, and do you think there's redemption for him? Do you think he's going to place higher, improve in placings, or do you think that top 4 placing was a one-time thing and now he will continue on that same trajectory to place more and more outside of the conversation? Let me know in the comments below. So that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you have not subscribed already. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.